This is the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Your hosts are Seth Jacobson and Patrick Heiler.
Hi, I'm Seth.
And I'm Patrick.
Chapter 9, A Signal, and her symbol is the trefoil leaf. I don't know why.
I assume it's the bundle of leaves that Mistress Mikira leaves in the window. The sort of yellow... It's one of those things where it has nothing to do with the actual meaning of the way the leaf or the trefoil leaf. It's just like, oh, well, we need to find a bundle of herbs in a window.
The ribbon split
Let's
into
use
threes.
the leaves. Yeah.
Nynaeve had to admit that Thom and Juilin between them had chosen a good campsite. In a sparse thicket growing on an eastern slope, covered with dead leaves, a scant mile from Moghedien, or Sin, or Kin, I'm not really sure. Anyone know? Moving forward.
I think Moghedien is the way it's said in the audiobook, but I could be making that up. Yeah.
Scattered sour gums and some sort of small, droopy, branched willow screened the wagon from the road in the town, and a 2-foot-wide rivulet ran from a stone outcrop near the top of the rise, down a bed of dried mud twice as broad. Enough water for their purposes. It was even a little cooler under the trees, with a small and welcome breeze. Once the two men had watered the team and hobbled them, where the horses could feed on the sparse grass upslope, they tossed a coin to decide which should take the lanky gelding to Moghedien, to purchase what they needed. The coin flipping was a ritual that they had developed. Thom, whose nimble fingers were used to performing sleight of hand, never lost when he flipped the coin, so Juilin always did it now. Thom won anyway, and while he was stripping the saddle from Skulker, Nynaeve put her head under the wagon seat and levered up a floorboard with her belt knife. Besides 2 small gilded coffers containing Amathera's presents of jewelry, several leather purses bulging with coin lay in the recess. The Panarch had been more than generous in her desire to see their backs. The other things looked trifling by comparison. A small dark wooden box, polished but plain and uncarved, and a wash-leather purse lying flat and showing the impression of a disc inside. The box held 2 terengriel they had recovered from the Black Ajah, both linked to dreams, and the purse, that was their prize from Tanchico, one of the seals of the Dark One's prison. As much as she wanted to find out where Sanche wanted them to chase the Black Ajah next, the seal was the source of her haste to reach Tarvalin. Digging coins from one of the fat purses, she avoided touching the flat purse. The longer it remained in her possession, the more she wanted to hand it to the Emerald and be done with it. Sometimes, she thought she could feel the Dark One, trying to break through, when she was just near the thing. She saw Thom off with a pocket full of silver, and a strong admonition to search out some fruit and green vegetables. Either man was likely as to buy nothing but meat and beans left to himself. Thom's limp, as he led the horse off toward the road, made her grimace. An old injury, and nothing to be done for it now, so Moraine said. That rankled as much as the limp itself. Nothing to be done. When she had left the 2 rivers, it had been to protect young people from her village, snatched away in the night by an Aes Sedai. She had gone to the tower still with the hope that she could somehow shelter them, and the added ambition of bringing down Moraine for what she had done. The world had changed since then, or maybe she only saw the world differently.
I think that is such a big turning point for Nynaeve. She has a couple of major ones. Obviously, being able to channel without being angry is a big one for her. Getting together with Lan, also passing her Aes Sedai test is a big one. But this, I think, is the biggest, when she realizes she's no longer out of the 2 rivers to keep those people safe. Obviously, she wants to help them and she wants to keep them safe. But here, in this moment, she's turning to herself and going, I'm out here to do other things, right? And those things are more worthy than being a wisdom in the 2 rivers. And those things involve hunting the Black Ajah and healing.
Yeah, and over the next couple of paragraphs, I feel like we're in Nynaeve's head a bit as she kind of tries to rationalize her new life path. We see her thinking like hunting the Black Ajah was good and right and satisfying, but also terrifying. And she's a grown woman now, and not a part of Emond's Field now, and she's like kind of just going over everything that's happened over the last, year?
Yeah. Yeah, and this is one of the reasons I think we love Nynaeve so much, is we really do get a chance to get in her head and see things from her perspective and realize some of the real emotional turmoil she's going through as she struggles to, find a life outside the 2 rivers.
Yeah.
As much as the previous chapter, I think I found very dissatisfying, this chapter feels very similar, but I find it immensely satisfying. And it's just funny how different, like, subtle changes in what he's talking about and how the characters are thinking can really make me happy with content versus not.
Yeah, character development. Not that many people are good at it. And
no, and even Jordan isn't always good at it, right? Like, I would say that he was trying to do some of that in the previous chapter, and it fell flat.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I get what you're saying about Chapter 8, that it was kind of like, this is a weird place to pick up and a weird event to divide into its own chapter.
I think so, yeah, where they encounter the White Cloaks on the way into the city.
Yeah, so 8, 9, and 10 are just Elayne and Nynaeve traveling along with Thom and Juilin, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And just sort of surviving, moving forward. I think we see a lot into the ladies' heads, especially, and how they are changing and developing and adapting to their surroundings.
And as much as I love Nynaeve's character development here, I think Elayne's is just weird. The whole flirting with someone who might be your father to compete with your mother is something I've never seen, never heard of. It just doesn't... It feels very, very unnatural to me, and I don't know if that's just because have limited experience.
I don't know that it's a competition. That being said, I don't really know what's happening there, but Nynaeve and Elayne talk about it a little, and I think, to me, I always felt more like this is a fairly sheltered girl who's going through some weird adolescent stuff, and she's stuck out here in the middle of nowhere, and there's this, super intelligent father figure.
Roguish.
But there's also, like, just a dash of sexuality mixed in there, and that's what makes it weird. But she's not a kid anymore, and I feel like she's still getting her feet under her. She's not as old as Nynaeve, and even Nynaeve doesn't really have her shit together yet.
But at this point, she has remembered who he is, that she used to sit on his knee as a little girl and tug on his mustaches.
Yeah.
And that makes this a little creepy to me. It just does. I'm sorry. Like, I just don't understand.
It does. It makes it a little... I'm not saying it's not weird. I'm just saying
okay.
that I think this is just Elayne kind of flailing about as we do when we're teens,
I do like the idea that she's practicing flirting, sort of like Leanne does with Moghedien.
I've heard a lot of specifically ladies say that. Leia's saying that right now, but I've heard other people say that she's practicing. She's like honing her, not coming up with the right word for it, honing her stuff.
Right. And she is thinking of Rand. She would like to get back to him. She would like to, but she hasn't heard from him in ages. And let's be honest, they spent like 3 days together. So, on the second time they met, it's not like they've, have this deep history and emotional relationship for her to draw on to sustain her. I do think what he's trying to portray is someone who's spoiled and hasn't had a lot of world experience going out and flirting for the first time.
I see that. Particularly the lack of experience thing.
Yeah.
That's what I'm kind of seeing. Like, she doesn't really know what she's doing. I feel like even sexuality is a fairly new thing for her. She doesn't know what she's doing, again. Christina's pointing out that Tom's safe. I think I'm feeling that too.
Yeah.
He's way too old for her. He would otherwise be a really desirable guy. Why not? He's great dude. Obviously great with the ladies, and good, moral, upstanding character who's super intelligent. She respects him. I don't know. And yeah, I think she's just. I think I might have said this in an earlier recording, but. Have you ever been in a situation where you're like, say, introduced to a new group of people, or say you get a new job, you're introduced to a group of new coworkers, and there's like a coworker that is physically attractive and really nice to you, and for like that first, I don't know, week or days or whatever, you're like, is she into me? Is this a thing? Or like, am I just projecting? And you maybe slowly realize that they're just good looking. And there's really nothing else happening there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I kind of think that might be what's happening.
I'm not thinking of anyone specific. at all. Nope.
No, for
Not
sure.
at
I mean,
all.
I think that happens to all of us, where for a moment you're like, ooh, I think I feel a thing here. And then you're like, no, I'm just dumb, actually. I forgot again.
Can we come at it from a slightly different perspective? Can we look at this from Tom's perspective
Yes.
and what he must be thinking, and like how being flirted with someone who's both very young and very attractive and someone you will never touch is extremely awkward?
Yeah.
And how, like, I'm not sure how he deals with it here and how well he deals with it. He does allow it, but I wonder if that's so much his court. The only way he really knows how to interact with it is through court manners. And so he's sort of like, and yeah, and obviously the daughter of your ex, right? Clearly, this is someone who you know could have been your daughter, right? Like, and probably looks a lot like her when you were sleeping with her, right? Like,
Ooh, yeah.
they're
didn't
about
even
the
think
same
of that,
age.
But,
Yeah.
yep. Leah, I'm not exactly sure. She's asking, is Elayne the age that Morghese was? I think Morghese may have been a little older, or I want to say that.
Morghese was
When
around
she-
16.
When she ascended to the throne?
Yeah.
Oh, so she's like exactly Elaine's age, or maybe...
And
Yeah.
and at that point, she was helped with the court bard, was one of her few allies. She talks about that basically the court bard was the reason that and one or two other allies got her her queenship.
Yeah, and I'd be willing to believe Thom like single-handedly placed her on the throne without
Right.
anyone knowing, including Morghese.
Oh, I 100% believe that. But then there was a period of time where she was married to Terengel, and they had kids, and then he tried to kill her, and then and there was this, and then Thom killed Terengel, and then, or caused him to die, however you want to call it, and then they were together for a while. So they were probably together later when she was more into her 20s, even though he supported her back when she was 16.
I don't know if I said this out loud yet, but Christini's pointing out that maybe he just doesn't want to embarrass her, and that's why Thom just kind of ignores her flirtatious behavior.
That's perhaps, totally.
And in a moment here, Nynaeve and Elayne talk about it a little, or Nynaeve brings it up. Basically, Thom comes back and has a sack of food or whatever, and Nynaeve looks at it and sniffs, and she's like, "Oh, this is only meat. This is like exactly what I told you not to do. This is just meat and potatoes." And she's like, "Come on, Elayne, we're going to town to go find some vegetables." Of course, they never do.
There really aren't any.
Yeah.
It's
But-
been hot for a long time, which, by the way, is about what we're experiencing right now in Portland. It is hot and dry, and everything is dead, which is great for my allergies, but not so. But that's about it.
I think it kind of starts out with... Ooh, I'm scanning back and back. This conversation was longer than I remembered. Elayne says, "Okay, so you obviously wanted to talk to me alone, Nynaeve. Is it about Moghedien?" And Nynaeve's like, "Nah, it's about Thom. I thought we should talk about that." Elayne pretends that she doesn't know what she means.
Which is ridiculous.
And Nynaeve says, "He's old enough to be her father." And she's like, "He's not my father," which in like a really weirdly defensive way.
A little too quick on the draw with that one, Elayne.
I think she may also be having that conversation in her head, thinking about the timeline and being like, "Oh,
Exactly. Because he was around the whole time, right?
Yeah.
He was there before Terengel. He recruited Terengel, and then he killed Terengel. The timeline is entirely possible.
Nin is saying, "I wonder if Nynaeve ever had to have this talk with young men and women back home." And yeah, almost certainly. That's like, I think, a big part of the women's circle organizes all that kind of stuff. If you're getting too handsy, it's time to get those kids married and settled in before...
Oh, Billy Alvear, that's your cousin. You can't, no.
Right,
It's a small town.
I'm sure some of that, too, you know. No, you can't marry him.
Why don't you go check out Taryn Ferry for a while, huh? See if you can find an Outlander girl. And because otherwise, we're going to have a lot of old blood in your genetic line. How's the Two Rivers like West Virginia? A lot of old blood in those lines. That's all I'm going to say.
And Nynaeve says, "Well, what about Rand? Like all those messages, like all the talking we did about that whole situation." And Elayne basically says, "You know, I'm in love with him, but he's really far away, somewhere out in the waste, surrounded by maidens of the spear. And Nynaeve's like, he's not going to sleep with a maiden. LOL. Just as an aside.
Not in the waist. Not in the waist. Nope, he's not going to sleep with her in the waist.
That is true. Then Elayne brings up Min's viewing, how she's more or less destined to be with him.
Oh, one thing I noticed is they say, it feels like someone's watching my dreams lately. I think that's Egwene, because she's mentioned that she's been able to find their dreams and has been watching them. And they both have this feeling in their dreams that someone's been watching. Could also be Brigitte hanging out in Tel'aran'rhiod watching them, which she admits to later.
Not Moghedien?
No, because I do think if Moghedien found them, she's right.
She'd do something about it.
She'd do something about it, yeah. So I agree that if Moghedien did find them, that would be the end of them. So it's a risk. It's a big risk going into Tel'aran'rhiod.
Yeah, and Nynaeve's like, is all that why you've been teasing Thom? Is it jealousy, or is it what? And Elayne basically says, there are 1,000 leagues between us, Nynaeve. Do you think Rand is refraining from looking at other women? A man is a man on a throne or in a pigsty. I'm going to read the rest of this because I like this part of Nynaeve's head here. She had a stock of homely sayings from her childhood nurse, a clear-headed woman named Linny, whom Nynaeve wished she would meet one day.
They never do get a chance to meet, as far as I know, which is a shame. Because Linny hangs out with Perrin, and as far as I know, Nynaeve pretty much stays with Rand.
Yeah, I don't think Nynaeve and Linny ever meet. I have trouble remembering what happens to Linny after Morghese flees the palace.
I mean, essentially they end up with the White Cloaks for a while, and then they're taken prisoner.
Linny's with her that whole time?
The whole time, yeah. Mm-hmm. Linny never leaves Morghese's side. They are very much sort of a pair in the story.
Does she survive the last battle, Linny?
Yeah, Linny, of course. Of course Linny survives the last battle. Nothing's going to kill her, not even the last battle.
The real reason I'm asking is because do you think when Elayne has her kids that Linny just appears from out of retirement, Cadsuane style?
Oh, absolutely.
To raise every generation of...
I would not be surprised if Linny can, touch the true source and just lives for 200 years just to raise babies.
Because Linny was Morghese's nanny as well, right?
Yeah. And Morghese's mother's, right?
I kind of want to share that in my musings, where sometimes I would love to write a novel one day, and I have some ideas clunking around in my head. I have a character that's based on Linny, just more of a badass, even maybe, but very almost. It's going to be a head nod if I ever write that book. It's going to be a head nod to the Wheel of Time.
How about Linny and
Sorelea?
The released Sorelea. I'd love to see those two get together.
The old tree roots and yeah.
That, and maybe Cadsuane on top of them. Just put those three in a room and watch the Dark One flee in terror. Lock the prison behind him. I'm good. They just give him a stern look. He'd be like, okay, I'm done.
And just the shame and humiliation. He would just run crying to his bedroom.
Totally.
Nynaeve says, well, I don't see why you have to flirt with Thom just because Rand might flirt with someone else. Or I don't see why you have to go flirting with men just because Rand might. Nynaeve reminds him that Thom is a man with secrets. Remember that Moraine sent him with us, and whoever he is, he's no simple country gleeman. And he was a great man, Elayne said softly. He could have been greater, except for love, she says. So I think there's a bit of that there, a bit of idolization, maybe, as well.
Oh, totally. I have a slightly unrelated question.
Sure.
So here, Elayne says my father is Tarangil Damondred, but her name is Elayne Trakand.
Right.
And yet her brother, who's also the son, was named after her. He is Galad Damondred.
And Gawain Damondred as well?
I think it's Gawain Trakand.
I don't know that I know anything about the customs in Andor about naming, but like Leia just said, I would imagine that Elayne must have the Traken name if she's going to take the throne after Morghese. Because no one respects a Damodred in Andor. I mean, not disrespect, but He's Cairhienin. He has no claim to the throne at all.
Oh, right. So, and Galad's not Morghase's son. That's right.
Or not the Lion Throne. He does have a claim to the Cairhienin throne, or did, I should say.
So why wasn't Galad's last name Mantir? Because he was the son of Tigraine Mantir. She wasn't queen. Okay. That makes sense. But wasn't she the daughter heir at that point? Daughter heir.
I don't know. That's a good question.
I saw this question on Reddit, and I actually just didn't have a good answer. I was like, well, I guess it's just personal preference, but...
If I had to extrapolate a little, I'd say that maybe the women take their mother's name and boys take their father's name.
Their father's? Yeah, that's as close as I can come to it.
And in this situation, at least, 20 years ago, Morghase and her husband may have thought that Elayne has an excellent chance of ascending to the Lion Throne one day, and Galad has some chance of ascending to the throne of Cairhien as the eldest boy, son of nephew to Laman.
Well, technically, by marrying outside of the country, I believe he gave up his claim to the throne, and that's why he always was pushing Morghase to give him more power, because he had given up any trace of power in his homeland, and so he really wanted more power in Andor, and that's why he was plotting to kill her.
Yeah, from what I remember, that's right, that Thom and Juilin tried to take the Cairhienin throne, but they wouldn't allow it.
Yeah, they were like, no. You married a queen. If we give you the throne, she's going to take it.
Right, and then it's too much like Andor owns Cairhien.
Exactly. Which, I mean, that was obviously before Cairhien fell apart. And went, Andor, help us. Which is very much, by the way, feels like Jordan writing the French surrendering and being like, English, help us. Like, it's very similar sort of historical precedent to like World War II for me. That, again, because the Cairhienin keep coming back, I feel like they have a very French culture, and I feel like Andor has a very English culture.
Yeah.
And you see that a lot of times where, like, they were ruled by the same ruler or the same family. I mean, like, the rules of the England, I mean, all of Europe, really, at one point, were one big family.
Oh, yeah. I've read some letters exchanged between the leaders before World War I was about to break out. I don't know if any of you have ever seen these, but they're pretty famous. And they'll often open with, like, some powerful Englishmen writing to the monarchy in Russia, but they'll open the letter with things like Cousin Nicky,
right?
Like writing to the king, to the Tsar, because they were closely related and grew up together in some cases, even though they're now running these nations that are opposing each other.
Family squabbles are the worst squabbles. That one killed a lot of people. And same thing in, I mean, if you really like draw out the family tree. Moraine's related to Rand, to Elayne. They all have family. Even if they're not directly related, they all have family that's related.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and then it's just one big family that fights the last battle, basically.
If Morghase had stayed married, wouldn't Elayne and Moraine be related through marriage? Like, distantly? Because Moraine de Madrid was... like the Laman's niece?
Or, wait. No, I don't... Oh, Jesus. Now, my mind just went kaplooey on the Andoran family line. I think we've been talking about it too much. I need it written out in front of me if we're going to go this deep into it.
I'm not even going to bother looking it up. But yes, very roughly, Moraine would be related to the Andoran line through marriage.
I know all the individual connections, but tracing them in my head takes mental effort, and so I need to actually have that diagram written out. But let's get past the incest part of the book.
There's no true incest happening here.
Just implied incest. It's like implied, possible flirtatious incest. It's It comes up a couple of times. There's that one time when Rand's sits down on the Lion Throne and all the old queens are looking down on him accusingly, and he's like, "What? I'm not related." Because he didn't know at that point. He had just found out that he was part of the royal house of Andor, and he was like, "Wait, does that mean I'm related to Elayne?" And he had to ask questions to figure it out. But there was those couple of weeks when he's like, "Oh, I want to bang my cousin." And then he had to, like, question that busybody historian woman who was basically a gossip, but he was able to reconstruct history and be like, if we were farmers, would we be related? And she's like, oh, God, no. Yeah, he never does ask about whether he's related to Aviendha, but my assumption is that, and we figured this out, that Aviendha is from a different sept than his father, and so they would obviously be unrelated. Vino's saying maybe that's why he gravitates towards Min, because he's sure they're not related. And I'm like, are you sure of that? I mean, Barrelane's the only big city out there. I bet there's a lot of Two Rivers blood that gets out into it. Anyone who leaves is going to, sort of the whole Terran Ferry thing, right? Terran Ferry is like blood mixed with the outside. Nobody leaves.
But that whole conversation between Nynaeve and Elayne is summed up at the very end here, where Elayne says, I'm not a child any longer. I'm as much a woman as my mother is. And I think that's fair.
Yeah. So while they're having this conversation, they are walking through the town, and Nynaeve sees a symbol of the Yellow Ajah.
Yeah, they start walking through the town. Nynaeve sees, what is it, broomweed wrapped in a yellow ribbon that's cut into 3 pieces, essentially.
Hanging upside down beside the door of the thatched roof seamstress shop was a bunch of what looked like broomweed with tiny yellow flowers. The stalks wrapped their whole length in white ribbon, then tied with a dangling yellow one.
Nynaeve mentions later that it's cut into thirds on the bottom to be, she said it's too specific. No one would accidentally make this decoration.
Totally. Yeah, it's like this really elaborate, very specific flower decoration that's only there as a Yellow Ajah symbol, and she only knows that because, well, she's basically a better healer than most of the Yellow Ajah, so they kind of gave her a few secrets.
How are we going to find out what it is? Elayne asks. Nynaeve liked that. Not, what are we going to do? The girl had backbone. Follow my lead, she said, gripping the basket tighter as she straightened. She hoped she remembered everything Ch9 had told her. She hoped Ch9 had told her everything. The plump yellow could be fluttery for an Aes Sedai.
And here we get Rhonda Makura, who gives us the best thing ever, and also one of the weirdest things ever, which is fork root tea, which makes everybody a little sleepy, but makes channelers really sleepy and prevents them from channeling. Yep.
And so Nynaeve essentially walks in, says, I saw your sign, the seamstress / wisdom. In this region, it's bad news to be a wisdom or to be seen as a woman who can heal people.
Actually, what region are they in? Are they in Tyr? Or no, they're near the White Cloak, so they're in Amador?
Amador is the city, right?
I lost track of where exactly they were traveling.
Amadicia?
Because they're heading to Tanchico?
From Tanchico.
From Tanchico.
To Tarvalin. But they have to...
Oh, right. Because they've got the seal. That's right.
They kind of have to swing around the spine of the mountains and then start heading north, which is what they're doing now.
Right, because they could passage through the mountains and do that whole over the mountains to the White Tower thing, but, that's really, really bad.
Well, right. Why climb over when you can just walk around?
Of course, maybe you should take a ship, but Nynaeve was somewhat adamant about avoiding that for some reason.
And plus, it's unlucky to go up into the Mountains of Mists. There's old things up there.
And then Mr. Makura, she ends up becoming captured by the Shan-Chan, and she ends up providing them with the secret of the fork root tea, which they start using to test girls.
Oh, that's right.
Interesting little... Because you can do it without having a channeler present.
Right.
Which is an interesting question, which means the tea only works on those who can channel, not those who might be able to channel.
Doesn't it work on Rhonda and Lucy in a minute here? It knocks them out? Or maybe Nynaeve knocks them out with something else?
I think she uses her stick.
Oh, but there's a funnel laying there next to them, and 2 pitchers, but a single cup and all that. Just talk at the Discord about how fork root worked on Morghese, but Morghese is not a non-channeler, she's just a barely channeler.
Yeah, but she touches the true power.
Well, in any case, just talking about this scene, Nynaeve walks in, she gives a sign by saying, I want a dress embroidered with yellow roses on the bodice, Nynaeve told her, but no thorns, mind, she added with a laugh. I don't heal very fast. And you're supposed to say a sentence, to give the sign, you're supposed to say a sentence using the word yellow and heal in the same sentence. The seamstress/wisdom character, Rhonda, sends her assistant, Lucy, away to the kitchen and says, "Oh, my finest tea, from the blue jar, from the blue jar." She keeps repeating it to her. And of course, we know what's about to happen, but Nynaeve is, of course, like, "So what's the urgent message? What is it?" And she's like, "Come on, just come and sit and have a cup of tea with me." And Nynaeve's like, "Why can't you just tell me?" She's like, "Sit down, and you're gonna want to sit down for this. Here, have some tea, have some tea." And finally, she gets them to sit down and sip the tea.
She's super nervous, yeah.
But let me know if you find that thing about fork root.
So I'd like to clarify, I mean, it works on everybody in sufficient dose. Everybody gets sleepy when they take it. But it works you can give just a tiny amount to a channeler, and they'll pass out.
Gotcha.
So it does look like they fed the two women fork root tea to make them pass out, but it was probably a lot more than they had to take for the women. Does that make sense?
Yes. Oh, yes. And now that I'm thinking about it, in the next chapter, we see Mistress Makura have the thought that she'll never get the taste of fork root tea out of her mouth. I forgot about that. "Sit, please," she said, filling the cups. "Please." Nynaeve took a ladder-back chair next to Elayne, and the seamstress set cups in front of them, flitting to one of the cupboards for pewter spoons. "The message?" Nynaeve said, as the woman sat down across from them. Mistress Makura was too nervous to touch her own teacup, so Nynaeve stirred a little honey into hers and took a sip. It was hot, but had a cool, minty aftertaste. Hot tea might settle the woman's nerves if she could be made to drink. "A pleasant taste," Elayne murmured over the edge of her cup. "What sort of tea is it?" "Good girl," Nynaeve thought, but the seamstress's hands only fluttered beside her cup. A Tarabonner tea from near the Shadow Coast." Sighing, Nynaeve took another swallow to settle her own stomach. "The message," she said insistently. "You did not hang that signal to invite us for tea. What is your urgent news?" "Ah, yes." Mistress Makura licked her lips, eyed them both, then said slowly, "It came near a month ago, with orders that any sister passing through heard it all at all costs." She wet her lips again. "All sisters are welcome to return to the White Tower. The tower must be whole and strong." Nynaeve waited for the rest, but the other woman fell silent. This was the dire message? She looked at Elayne, but the heat seemed to be catching up to the girl, drooping in her chair. She was staring at her hands on the table. "Is that all of it?" Nynaeve demanded, and surprised herself by yawning. The heat must be reaching her, too. The seamstress only watched her, intently. "I said," Nynaeve began, but suddenly her head felt too heavy for her neck. Elayne had slumped onto the table, she realized, eyes closed and arms hanging limply. Nynaeve stared at the cup in her hands with horror. "What did you give us?" she said thickly. That minty taste was still there, but her tongue felt swollen. "Tell me." Letting the cup fall, she levered herself up against the table, knees wobbling. "The light burn you what?" Mistress Makura scraped back her chair and stepped out of reach, but her earlier nervousness was now a look of quiet satisfaction. Blackness rolled in on Nynaeve. The last thing she heard was the seamstress's voice. "Catch her, Lucy!" Before she falls on her face, I'm assuming.
Right, and hurts herself.
Yeah, at first I thought Nynaeve managed to run a few steps, but I'm pretty sure she's just falling over.
I noticed the mention of the Shadow Coast here, which is one of the few times it's ever brought up. It's sort of the southern point where the coastline goes from north-south to east-west. We call that Boot. And we almost never hear about it, but it's sort of a desolate, dangerous place full of poisonous plants and mean animals, and it's sort of racked by all the storms of the sea. It sort of protects the mainland from all the storms. So, an appropriate place for something like fork root to come from.
It looks like a huge desert on the map. That's just the kind of the southwestern corner of Randland.
And this is the actual coast, I think. The Shadow Coast is like where all the rocks and stuff are sticking out at that point.
I assume so, based on the name.
Yeah. Right. And so I imagine like plants that are like growing in between rocks and like putting out spiny thorns but kind of minty. Oh, and that the message is in fact the real message, because the White Tower has split, and that's the missing piece of information that the girls don't have. They haven't been told that the tower is broken yet. Whenever they hear Amerlin's seat, they're thinking Suan Sanche.
Right, which is why nothing makes sense to them at first. They don't know about the split in the tower or anything. And
also, they are being taken in particularly because of this order came through for Elayne specifically because of Elaita's foretelling that the key to the last battle would be through the throne of Andor.
Yeah.
And we've talked about that before, where at the time that ended up being Tigraine, which was Rand's mother, so she really should be focused on Rand, not Elayne.
Not
probably.
Right. Not to mention the political problem of losing the Andoran heir to the throne while she was in their care.
I gotta fix this chair. It's a little squeaky. I've been hearing it on recordings.
Oh yeah, I guess I have too, but I don't even really think it just feels like a natural sound. Didn't really.
It's not too. Yeah, I mean, I
me.
don't worry about it too much. It's definitely part of recording. It's like, oh yeah, someone's sitting in a chair, and we can tell, but it doesn't like totally ruin it. But
yeah, you can probably just, to be honest, sometimes I just use like canola oil to oil stuff around the house. It works fine.
It's basically what I did with this chair before.
Yeah.
Lasted a couple months. I mean, it doesn't last nearly as long, and it does wear away much faster than like a conventional lubricant, but it works for a little while.
Yeah, I used to have tool oil laying around the house. I don't know what happened to it, so last time my bike chain needed greasing, I just used a little cheap cooking oil.
Right. And remember, folks, WD-40 is not a lubricant. It's a cleaner.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You should never use WD-40 as a lubricant. What you should do is, basically it's designed to soak through threads and dissolve rust. So you can, like, unbind threads, right? So it's really good at, like, basically dissolving stuff that makes things stick. So it's for making things move again. And it does have some oil properties to it, so it will slightly lubricate, but it's no good as a lubricant because it really is designed to dissolve lubricant and like carry it away.
Oh,
It's really a cleaner.
never use it. I don't really know.
That's why it's for when things are stuck, But then once things are unstuck, you want to actually lubricate them with something designed to hold up to that. WD-40 will go away in a couple of days, and then you'll be left with just rusty bearings. And nobody likes rusty bearings. Especially when they're ball bearings. Rusty ball bearings are bad news. And then you're like constantly... It's almost like WD-40 is an addiction because like you use it to clean out the junk, but then there's no lubricant, and so it rusts again, and then you have to clean it out again. And so it's like this, I think that's why people get addicted to WD-40. Do not, use in moderation and use properly, or else addiction can develop.
I use oil for like everything.
Just like canola oil. It's amazingly effective.
Yeah.
And cheap.
I'll use olive or coconut on my skin, which is actually doctor's advice.
Sure.
They're like, oh, you're buying that really expensive moisturizer? He was like, if you're ever in a pinch, you could just use coconut oil. It's like just as good as the fancy stuff you buy in the store. Oh, really? Okay. It's just a hell of a lot cheaper.
Yeah. And I know, like, you use Vaseline quite a bit as well. Like, that's also, like, a really cheap alternative of just, like, oh, this will stick on there and...
Yeah, especially when it's cold. If my skin gets dried out, it sucks.
Yeah. Well, you've got eczema combined with dry skin, with dry weather, and that's just nasty.
But turning from eczema, let's go on to...
things Patrick doesn't want to talk about.
Thank you for listening to the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Rate us in the Apple Podcast app or support us on Patreon. Is that good enough?